It's a different.
Test. Test, perfect.
Sure.
We are ready to go when you are, Chair, and it is 5:31.
All right. Welcome everyone to a meeting of the Administration and Public Works Committee for Tuesday, July the 7th, 2026 at 5:30 p.m. here in the Wildwood City Hall Community Room. Ms. Mathis, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Owen,
Here.
Councilmember Trottier. Councilmember Chair Attenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell. Here. Councilmember Means.
Here.
Councilmember Rambo. Councilmember Crayons,
Here.
Councilmember Albers.
Here. What up, people? 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, we're good.
Dr. Rambo is joined via Zoom, so
Okay.
if you want to reread that one,
Okay.
he was trying to get in.
Councilmember
Yeah.
Rambo.
Yes, I'm here. It took a second to get promoted. Thank you.
All right, and Councilmember Rambo, we'll try to do a better job of not ignoring you like we did at the last meeting. So.
That's fine. A lot of people have done that, so it's not a big deal to me, but thank
All right,
you.
not intentional. Okay, so next item is the approval of the minutes from the June 2nd, 2026 meeting. Does anyone have any questions, comments regarding the minutes from that particular meeting? If not, then I will entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from the June 2nd meeting made by Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Means. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? Minutes approved. Thank you. Okay. Public participation. There is no one I see in the audience. Do we have anybody online?
Just Miss Clark.
Ms. Clark. Okay, Ms. Clark, welcome. Did you have any comments that you wanted
You
to
can
make?
use the raise hand feature if you would like to speak for public comment. If not, we will proceed. We're good to go, Chair.
Okay. All right. Moving on from public participation, we move into administration. Review of standardized petitioners committee affidavit form. This is something that I spoke to the city administrator about previously. And what this is some internal housekeeping to make sure that a form that is used for, recall or petitioning on any other type of matter is in keeping, I believe, with state law. Is that correct, city administrator?
That is correct. So the city charter has a section that allows residents to propose their own ordinances, to also have referendums. So call into question an ordinance that the city council had passed, and then also for recall in some instances. So nonetheless, the city doesn't have a dedicated city council approved form. And we had noted that in the charter that there was a specific request for a form to have that was created by the city. So what we're doing here is creating a standardized form. It's Exhibit A here, that's included in the report. What this does, it kind of covers all three all at the same time. So that if someone ever were to request one of these, it would be city council approved. We'd most likely, after review tonight, if the committee would endorse it, we would bring it forth to the city council under a resolution to adopt it as a formal document for the city. Nonetheless, one other note that I did want to make while we're just talking about this, because we will be talking about the charter, the update to the charter, which we'll do in 2027 as part of a 10-year. Every 10 years we review it. And one thing that we do have that's somewhat a little out of alignment is that usually for our charter, that when it has the recall component, now the state statute has been updated in the last 10 years, and it does force whoever would try to do something like that to say for cause. So right now it just says you wouldn't have to put the for cause in the charter, but state statute would kick in after that, and you would still have to provide it. So this form is will still cover it then, covers it now. But when we go to the charter review, I make a note of that because that will be something that is brought up by legal counsel, but also the department for an update later on.
So just to answer a question that may come up, so this form that we are acting on tonight, this has been reviewed by city legal advisory, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, all right, very good. Does anyone have any questions on this form? Ms. Dodwell?
Just real quickly, why don't we have the for cause in again? I mean, since this is a new form, I don't see any reason why we can't.
We could include it. It doesn't require like that our chart, it would, the one thing about that is, I guess the state statute does require it, but our charter doesn't call for it explicitly. So that would be the one question to go against. But if we wanted to include that in the form, that's not gonna make a big difference either way. It is just that it would be technically inconsistent with our charter, but consistent with state statute. We look to remedy that exact question in 2027 when we do the charter review. So without updating the charter, that would be the one little hiccup, but we could definitely ask the city attorney's team to see if they can.
Yeah, see if we could add it now and then not have to go back to it later, because I think it would be helpful for anyone who's reviewing the form to know what their issue is. Why are they recommending something
I agree with
occur?
that. It sounded like we could go down a path and then end up having to go back and rely on state statute and ask for that cause anyway from the
Yeah.
individual based on state statute. So now you've set a group of individuals up and made them go back to the drawing board for the cause reason, which could be frustrating to them. And also if they have to put a cause on here, could potentially keep them from filing something if they don't have a good cause. So
I got some question. So, so 5 people can initiate a referendum?
It starts a process, so what this would technically do is they'd have to fill out this form, it would be certified at least from the city clerk's department. And then they would have to go out and collect petitions, so there's different thresholds for different things you're trying to put on the ballot, but this is just to start the process. You need 5 people to serve as a committee that will oversee the lawful collection of signatures.
So this is all you're asking us to look
Yeah,
at?
yeah, just the form, because
Okay.
the specific thing that brought this up was that we have a form. It says that we should have this form on file, but we haven't. I went back to the records before. The most latest example was when we changed Old Slave Road to Madison Valley. We had a somewhat of a form, but it was a little bit more inorganic, where kind of residents just came about, had like a Excel sheet that was signed. So we look back on it to really, this is housekeeping, to update it so we have a standardized form that everybody's reviewed. And in this case, we could try to incorporate that for cause provision too, if it doesn't have any, if it jives well with the city charter.
Now, who pays for the election?
In that case, if the individuals that put up,
Petitioner.
yeah, the petitioner, I believe, I would have to do some research. I can get back to you with that answer, but I believe if they were to get all the signatures necessary, the city would actually be,
Is it 60% or
um,
2/3 to get rid of a council member?
oh, you would need,
No, the votes.
I think it's 90% to get.
Percentage.
one second here. I don't want to give bad info. I want to give the exact date.
what are you planning?
He's gonna revolt.
Well, people don't like on the council.
Okay, so there's different ones for petition, I'll just read some of these.
Yeah, the initiative and the referendums are different amounts.
Yep.
And the recall is a different amount too.
Mhm. So a number of signatures for initiative and referendum petitions, they shall be signed by registered qualified voters of the city equal in number to at least 10% of the total numbers of persons registered to vote at the last general municipal election. And then the recall threshold would be at least 15% of the total number of persons registered to vote. And our interpretation is that would be 15% of the total number of whatever you have to be within for initiative or petition that affects the entire city. That's the entire city you have to deal with that 10% threshold. But that 15% threshold on a recall, the understanding is that would be that ward, because you'd be calling into question a specific ward.
Thank you. All right, good. Any other questions or discussion?
The only thing I would add is this tonight, we would be just requesting a recommendation to review first and foremost if that for cause item can be added to the form, and if so, or if not, that we would bring this forth to the city council, the company resolution, so we can have it on file.
So Councilmember Dodwell, did you want to make that
I'll
motion?
make said motion as stated.
All right, and we have a second from Councilmember Owen. So all those in favor, say
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? now, so that was to add that to, so do you still need a vote on the form itself? Because that was just a vote on the change.
My understanding was that we can, but I thought that was encompassing both the request to have the language added for the four
As long
call.
as you're satisfied with what we've done, I'm good.
Amy, that motion, did you have it as one? Okay.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, moving on to preliminary review of the fiscal year 2027 capital improvement plan and 5-year capital improvement plan. There's an action item here, so City Administrator, I am back to you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Want to do a quick update on this. We'll be diving into this a little bit further in August, but clearly in September and October as we get into budgeting. We wanted to kind of kick off the process. Capital improvements always, one of the hotly debated, which we've been able to address by going through our priority scoring matrix that we introduced last year. The question we want to introduce before we start crunching all the numbers, and to give the council here, I know we have some new members of this committee, but also new members of the council as well, was to do a check-in to make sure that the criteria that's listed in our scoring matrix and our overall process for how we go through, score each project, and then recommend it for approval, inclusion, or recommend it for addition to the unfunded needs list, whether or not that process is all, should we proceed with that process, similar to what Mr. Owen has there. But the chart that's included tonight, you'll see that they're all zeros. What will typically happen, I guess we can share this. Can we share that image there? So nonetheless, once we actually proceed with agreement on the criterion and also the process that we have here, the plan would be to go through the already planned projects that we have listed for fiscal year 2027. The staff would go through and score these. Just I'll point out here. These were what were listed out under the 5-year. You'll notice that zeros are in place here. It's because we have prefabricated equations on this side, so we didn't want to mess with that. But nonetheless, these will be filled with actually denominations of 0, 3, 5, or 9. That process is used to add weight. So 0 would be an indication that under that criteria, it has minimal impact and it doesn't support it. So if it's a master plan, a 0 would represent that it's clearly not included in the master plan and couldn't really be even subject to it, has nothing to do with it. A 9 would be, it's directly supporting one of the major clauses. Then you can kind of fall in between the gray area, because a 3 would be, hey, it's supporting one of the goals, but it's definitely an indirect supporting factor. And then the same could be said for a 5. Hey, it's listed, but it's not a goal. It's maybe one of the policies that we have listed in the master plan. So nonetheless, this would be filled out, completed. It would have 3 in each one of these cells. You'd have 3, 5, or 9, or 0. And then it actually calculates. Can you scroll up just a little bit there, Brendan? I don't know if we'll be able to see the top there, but on the top, these are actually the criteria are weighted. So the other component that comes in here is that the master plan is, at least from last year, and this is what we're really discussing tonight, the master plan was considered the highest criteria we wanted to weight in this matrix. So when you score this, say you score this a 3, if it's got a 3 on the master plan, you're actually multiplying the 3 by the 18, and you go all the way down for something like tourism and recreation. Say this, you scored a 3 on this, then you just do 3 times 1. All of these numbers are added to give you a priority score at the end. And typically what we would do is we would fill this out and have a hard line dropped wherever it might be that, when you take into account grant funding and you take into account fee expenditures from our half-cent capital improvement sales tax, there'd practically be a line drawn for the council and committee to know, hey, these projects can be funded with city fee expenditures and revenues, and then anything underneath would be highlighted in red and would show, hey, that would, if we did all these projects, it would list them underneath that threshold. So the goal tonight is not necessarily to approve a capital improvement plan or to approve certain projects and whatnot. It's really more so looking at whether or not we want to continue with this process. It did work very well last year for helping balance out our capital improvement budget. And it seems to be working well this year. That said, we wanted to do 2 things, make sure that this is the process the council would like to continue using moving forward. And then also get initial feedback from the council if there's anything that might be wanted to be considered for scoring as we go into the fiscal cycle. One thing here, a couple that were added for ourselves, if you could scroll down just a little bit there, Brendan. A couple things that were brought up by staff, that we do have listed here that could be considerations are, some committee members have mentioned this is at the Planning and Parks Committee, but the stage structure has been asked about, at the Village Green, so that was listed here as a TBD. But more importantly for this committee is stuff that has been discussed and also at Board of Public Safety. We've talked internally about a streetlight conversion, but we've recently had updates there where we might just try to have Ameren, we reimburse for a fixed cost from Ameren. So that said, if we were to actually demeter and, do a maintenance program of our streetlights that are more dedicated from the capital improvement plan.
You're referring to the situation involving,
That's correct.
Bank of
Yeah.
Houston.
Yep.
Okay.
And the church and a couple others, but those are
Right.
the church and the Bank of Houston are the big ones.
Mhm.
But then the other big one here that we wanted to make sure to call out was the we call it here the pedestrian safety improvement program. It's a little broad, but we wanted to make sure that we're gonna try to get some numbers on this, but after talking with the Department of Public Works, we've identified a need. Over time, our flashing beacon crosswalks that give indication that someone is crossing the street, pedestrian is, over time, they just tend to break down. They start, really falling apart to the point where they're not working properly. And with those being there, they're there for a purpose. We found that they're pretty expensive to maintain, which should definitely be a consideration moving forward, whether or not these are added. And, really, we have a policy in place of when they can be added and where we would consider them. But the idea would be to have each year some money set aside where we can go in and start either replacing or fixing some of the ones that we have, so we can plan for it. Because the problem is when you have one that goes down now, say water's getting into one of the actual beacons and it causes it to flicker, it's causing it not to turn on at certain times, then all of a sudden you have to fix that, or you have to remove it, and that has a cost associated with it. But this is hopefully going to have a kind of a sitting item each year. We know we own this many of these things. We know each year it's going to cost some money to maintain them. This will help at least absorb that shock and kind of plan for those improvements each year going forward. So just a couple of the ideas we wanted to bring up.
Do
moving
you have
in-
a summary of what's been expended per year on
For the-
repairs already?
We can pull that together, but we haven't had actually that, we installed them and they're kind of moving towards their end of life.
Yeah, in a lot of
cycle.
places.
I might defer to Rick here a little bit, but I know we just had on Manchester, they were hit by cars. In those instances, we can try to get it through restitution with the courts, but most of the time, we're on the hook for rebuilding them. But the ones on Manchester alone, those were in the $70,000 to replace all three, correct?
So we have a contract and it roughly equates to about $25,000 per crosswalk, frankly, to replace pretty much everything except the poles. Because we just find that the push buttons start to leak and the batteries start to fail and the solar panels get aged and they don't last forever. They've been in place for over 10 years and
You say they don't last very long. How many years do you estimate an average?
well, I think realistically, and I've said this before, you probably don't want to figure much more than 10 years,
Okay,
which, I mean, that's not
bad.
bad, right? It's just, they're not gonna last for 20 years. Traffic signal, you can get a little bit more life out of it, but these have not been as durable. Maybe the newer varieties will be. They were fairly new when we installed them, so. The second or third generations might be a little bit more durable.
So how many more of these, how many do we have and how many more do we have proposed? Do you know that?
We're replacing 3 this year. We probably have another 8 or 9 out there. So if we could, I guess what I'd like to do is have a plan to replace, next year, maybe half of those and the following year, the remainder or something to that effect. It'd just be a matter of having enough monies budgeted that we could put a project out, get it bid and get that work done.
Right now, after less than 10 to 12 years, and we've got 10 to 12 of them, it's $25,000 a year on average. The more we put in, the more that budget goes up every year to replace crosswalks. We just gotta think about the long-term impact. If we end up with 36 of them across the city, then it's $75,000 a year to replace crosswalk beacons.
That's very fair assumption. That's something we're trying to call out too, is that, clearly, we want to be able to help residents when these requests come in and when it makes sense. And the department actually put together a really nice rubric to show when a crosswalk location makes sense for it. But nonetheless, we're trying to really upfront tie some costs to this. So going forward, we all know what we're getting into if someone requests them. I know we had recently updated the committee here about the crosswalk over at the high school, but the good news is that's not going to be city owned. So that'll be on county property and they will have to maintain that. So it's a little bit of a different calculus, if you will. But nonetheless, the ones we do have, they do seem to be heading towards end of life, and we at least wanted to have some type of, even if it's just replacing maybe one or two each year, it's just, you're slowly chipping away at the problem versus waiting for them to fail, which then you create your own safety issue in that case.
Well, if you replace one or two per year, then we're on a long-term cycle where, okay, 10 years from this or 9 years from this, let's budget for replacing one or two. And then it's not quite the same size of a hit.
So city administrator, what do you need from us on this topic?
Yes, so tonight, really, this is supposed to be more of a, really looking at the rubric, so how we're gonna grade these. We can dive into a little bit more detail if anybody would like to learn a little bit more about how we plan to score them and that process. And then the criteria itself in the report, the weights actually are really helpful too, because it shows that 0, 3, 5, and 9. It gives examples too in some instances, but truthfully, if you want to go through these as a committee, if the council has issue with any of the criteria, if they should maybe be restacked, in this case, an example would be, hey, master plan's important, but we really think public safety should be the top priority. So give that, if we wanted to make any changes in that regard, that's what we wanted to open up the discussion for tonight. So that when we go in, we're going to plan to score this and then bring that scored matrix back to the committee, that we're all working from an agreed upon criteria and weights.
So, this is our plan for 2026, correct? This
That's
is
what's
what we,
currently listed.
how much of this have you got finished, I guess is my question. Is that,
2020, no, this is 2027.
oh, this is
Yeah,
20,
This is 2027.
all right, okay. So how successful are you this year with scoring?
Just real quick, 1 second. The only one that's a little bit off base for 2026, and I have a note in here, one moment, is we have a lot of it ordered, but the playground hasn't been constructed yet. That was programmed for 2026, so that's a big piece. And we anticipate that the equipment's actually going to be in October. The only question we have to answer now is the stormwater consideration, so that one should be picking up here shortly. And then the only other item was the Main Street extension, getting the easement. So we do have $200,000 budgeted for the easements on the north and south side. Right now, we're currently reviewing that appeal at the development appeal that's going on.
So this really helps you manage?
Yes, this helps kind of upfront. Well, the two things that it does is that it kind of helps, us go to, say, a resident or a group of residents are really interested in a project to improve something very specific that might not affect the whole city. If they come to the city and they make a big deal and say, hey, we want to get this included right now, it at least kind of puts a fortress, if you will, saying, hey, here's our plan, here's how we score it.
Get mine.
We don't want to throw a grenade into the tent, if you will. We have a very solid plan, and what we'll do, and this is where, honestly, I think this becomes the most useful tool of it, is that you can take a project like that maybe a group of residents are pushing for, and you can place it in our unfunded needs list. And that unfunded needs list can serve and will serve as a repository moving forward of, hey, here's a list of projects that have been made important by our residents or by a group of council members, whatever it might be. And for one reason or another, we just didn't have the funding to be able to cover it. But each year we'll kind of include that in the discussion and talks. And then slowly, as you chip away at the capital improvement cycle in the 5-year, then hopefully it can start filling in that 5th year. It's just more so setting up a more organized process to put a hard line on certain years to say, hey, after this line, we just don't have the funding to show that more clearly to everyone. But then also on the flip side, being able to fill in that 5th year on the 5-year, it'll help in the long term, making sure we know.
Well, and if you look at this list, the City Hall capital investment, that's been on the wish list for a couple of years now. So has the bridge replacements for Wild Horse Creek. And so they've moved out of that red zone down there up into let's do it this year kind of thing, which is a positive, which is the way this is supposed to flow so that we don't forget what those important things are. We just don't have the money for them this year.
So, so this is under the capital improvement tax, right?
Yes,
This is where you get the money.
100%. And federal grants.
And, okay, and that runs about what, 2.5 million or something like that?
So we currently, each year, we typically get about 2.9 million in
Okay.
actual half-cent tax, but then we usually leverage that to get 80% matches from
Sure.
from the federal
So
government.
that's the budget you get.
That's truthfully, yeah.
That's what you're spending, okay.
percent.
Councilmember Albers, you had your hand.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I really hope Main Street Extension can become a reality this year, this upcoming year of 27. Because the sooner we put it all together, it puts everything that the city is dreaming about, so to speak, to have it look like. So just a editorial comment, sort of, I guess. So that's all.
So, yes, Councilmember Rowland.
So I see the budget for that here is 1.5, but somewhere I thought I read it was like 3.8.
Yeah, so there, that was done in the 5 years. So this is not given the full context. So we didn't know, since we've had this kind of cloud over Main Street because we've been waiting for a development proposal to go through. And also we were gonna, the seven on the north side isn't as critical because you do, I mean, it is critical. It's 10 to 15 feet you need on that north side. But the 40 feet depth that we need, 750 feet length on the south side, that is, you know, if you don't have that, then the project can't proceed. You can't build a road around it. And you also need everyone to give rights to Crestview.
Right.
So when you're looking at that, what you're seeing is 2026, I mean, not 26, 2027, we had 1.5 budgeted, and then 2028, we had 1.5 budgeted because we knew one of those years we were hoping that construction would take place. And that means still in the 5 year, you're accounting for that. That said, that 3.86 number that you were referencing did actually just come from the most recent engineer's estimate. So our last estimate before that, it's gone up about $800,000 to do that project. So you are seeing there has been an increase to do it. Nonetheless, the plan was have it budgeted either for 27 or 28, whenever we can actually get it done legally, given the easements necessary. So that 1.5 should actually be 3 if you connect with what's planned in the 5 year in 2028.
And is that 3.8 number, are we gonna get?
We'll have to account for
We
that.
getting matches on that, or is
So
that?
that was another thing we were gonna bring up, is that technically under the LPA program, and Rick knows more than I on this, but Main Street is listed as one of the streets that could be eligible. That said, there's always been kind of a question of whether or not doing the extension itself would be a eligible project. But that said, that I believe would be a really good project to have as part of our funding application cycle going into 2027. And if we can secure easement prior to it, it helps the case when you're going, as long as you do it the right way. It goes towards getting a little bit more points when you go to apply for funding.
Councilmember Means, did you have your hand up earlier? Okay, all
I
right.
had one other question.
Yes.
Too, on the grid itself, we've used this a lot in the business world when I was there. The only thing that I think we might want to think about is listing these as 1 to 18 and doing the math that way. Because then when you get down to 1, you really get no impact. So we've done this before and done them in like 3, 5, 7, 9 and categorize them in one of the 3, 5, 7, 9. That way, one weight is no more than 3 times the other weight versus 18 times the other weight
Yes.
when you look at the things across the top.
Gotcha. So you're not just saying, because one thing is we did have this listed from 1 to 18, but there was questions that, hey, put the most important factor first. But you're saying instead of
I'm
having
saying
1 to
make the
18,
first
make them grouping.
6 a 9, make the next group a 7 and then a 5 and then a 3 or something.
That's the feedback that I would appreciate it, because so is that something the committee would like to do, is when we look at this criteria and the weights, are there specific criteria that you would say we could group together and give the same, would you say that's the question we have to ask here. So for the master plan.
Where would you break them if you did it that way?
If you broke them, I would say, master plan, public safety, overall benefit, estimated cost, and the 5 year strategic plan. So 18 through 14, I would say that would be high tier criterion. And then as you go forward, the ongoing expenses, definitely a high one, but nonetheless, urgency and timing, external funding, feasibility, risk mitigation, and then city-owned infrastructure. I'd probably put a line there, because then the next one's the legal implications. I'd go all the way down to traffic impact. So you'd almost break it up into groups of 4, 4, 5, and 5. You would have, easier to point this out, sorry. This is just a quick look at it, but you could, and what Mr. Owen is saying is, if everyone agrees that master plan, public safety, estimated cost, which is calculated on a percentage of the total revenue that we bring in each year, and then overall benefit, and then the 5-year strategic plan. If we think these are all even weights, so master plan is just as important as the cost, if it's included. We could technically group those so that if they score, then you would have something like a 9 up there versus 18 through 14. But if we want to go by it one by one, you still have this option that we've done before, which does work, but I understand what you're saying because it helps group. If we have,
Otherwise, the last couple items really are like,
they don't have as much weight.
yeah,
in here.
there's so little weight, they're really not gonna have an impact on your
Yes,
score.
exactly, because you're talking, when you do these calculations, typically what ends up coming out the back end here is you're seeing it something around 700 to 1,000, depending on the priority of it. If it scores high, we had the highest score last year, I think, was 1,033. That said, if we had it where these last ones in the last section would maybe be a 3, you would probably have a little bit less standard deviation. You would have your standard deviation would probably decrease a little bit. So we could come back with maybe 2 options here, like if you scored it this way or scored it that way. Once you score it, it's pretty simple. It's just filling in the numbers up top. We could come back with a recommendation on grouping them, if that would be something the committee would want to see.
Maybe you could do this for us, since you did it that way last year, get the groupings. If they're the same, with the new scoring methodology to last year's, and then let's see
Show the
where,
difference.
how it shakes out.
Yeah.
And I think that would give us an indication of how it would have impacted us last year, and if we can figure out if it is relevant to make that change for this year. And you can probably do that in, it's 5 minutes on a spreadsheet.
Yes, and so in this case too, does the committee, would they want to provide the flexibility to staff to kind of go in there and group these accordingly too? So we would go in and say, hey, because one thing, I was looking at this just quickly, the 5-year strategic plan, in this case is very important, but the master plan technically would outweigh it. And that's how the committee had saw it, and council had saw it last year. So there would be some that are going to kind of jostle around here, but it should stay pretty true to form of what we have in front of you tonight. So we could do that and show both.
So, is that a motion that you require?
Yeah, that could be a motion.
So I make a motion that we do the top boxes to be weighted 3, 5, 7, 9. We'll have to figure out which categories go where, but we make that, we'll let you maybe figure out where those weights go and bring it back to us.
That sounds good. And
Does everybody understand what we're talking about doing here? Okay.
We're still gonna do all these projects, right?
yes.
We're just getting organized and.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, makes sense.
So this is what I was hoping would be the benefit of having a couple of guys from the financial service sector on the admin and PW. So you're on the hook for the next grade idea.
And then I guess the only other thing too, and I don't want to forget the motion, but if there's any projects that the committee wanted to at least, kind of give a nudge for us to score this year, that was also something I wanted to open it up for. If someone wanted to at least have it go through that process, then it would be reviewed by committee.
So before we go too much further, we do have a motion on the floor and we need a second. So who would like to make the second? Councilmember Dodwell makes the second. Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions, motion carries. Great, thank you. What else do we need to do on this topic, city
If
administrator?
there were anything, staff is keeping an eye on all these things, but if there are any projects that, residents have been requesting or asking about, that, there wants to be a motion tonight, hey, let's grade that project. Tonight would be the night to bring that up, and we can at least run it through as long as the committee concurs.
All right, council members, Kranz and Albers, you guys are in wards 7 and 8, right in the heart of the city. You might say, anything come to mind?
Well, Old State Roundabout, which is, there's a lot of negotiations to do with, Thomasville and the county. Give them the pointing up some money, and I don't think we're ready to do anything yet, but something down the road that people are concerned about, the safety of Old State. And
So put that on the red category.
we could put it on the list.
So it's
And just for my benefit, which intersection on Old State is it?
Ridge Meadows.
where you have to make that hard left.
Yeah.
To get to
It's a county road, and they should pony up the money, and they know it's dangerous, but it's not high on their scoring list because there's no fatalities, unfortunately. And the county,
Fortunately, but unfortunately.
Yeah.
but,
It's never unfortunate.
but is dangerous, and so, the director will probably put a deal together for us that we can pass down the road.
Rob.
I think Center Avenue has already been downgraded, right?
Yes, that is correct.
'Cause-
So
Yeah, and that's fine, because they're sort of getting what they asked for.
And a note on Center Avenue too, because, you know, the thing that kind of affected that project score was originally, we didn't have it resurfaced. Back in 2023, we fully resurfaced the road. If you go down Center Avenue now, it's actually in pretty good shape.
Right.
That said, it wouldn't meet the same, you know, aesthetic and looks as if you drove down West Glen or something along those lines, clearly. That said, one of the issues we've had, and found this during design, was that if you were going to put the sidewalk in, you were gonna have to carve a little too much into some of the properties, and we weren't able to get buy-in from some of the local residents there. So truthfully, you would have to have like a sidewalk coming in, and looking at that on a map, you'd have it coming down on the west side of the street, but then it would cross over halfway through and then go down the east side of the street, which kind of takes two sidewalks and disconnects it. You'd have some stormwater improvements made if we redid the road as well. But truthfully, the resurfacing effort, you'd have to resurface the road. And then the sidewalk, unless you can get it all on one side of the road, I would say, and I'll defer to our city engineer, but I think that would be the main selling point of doing something on that road, would be if you actually can get the sidewalk on a contiguous piece of landmass.
I don't think they want to give up any easements there, because that Ashley Grove deal, you know, they're kind of united against it, you know, so.
And there are gonna be, and that brings up a good point too, because where Ashley Grove is, there are gonna be improvements done at that portion of the corridor. And the question would be, well, hey, could you connect that down in a sidewalk? But if you don't have that easement on the west side of the road there, then you would technically have it come down. It would look just fine, but then it would have to cross over the street, which wouldn't look normal if you had to do that, where you had to cross over.
And I think there's things in there for Etherton, but I really think Etherton will be developed as houses or other developments are constructed, you know, if everybody knows like where Main Street crossing backs up to Etherton, I think that's how the road will continue to build out with future developments.
And that is another consideration too. So, and Etherton was on there. And one thing we had kind of taken into account is that once Main Street gets extended and you connect there, that would actually be a great, you know, kind of beachhead to start working on that project. But when we looked at it, I think there's 17 easements that you have to procure to do that project, which it was a pretty steep climb,
Right.
considering what improvements would need to occur. So that said, it can be done. There are opportunities where development could occur, and then they would have to build out their frontage. And the same could be said, you know, we could kind of fill in the gaps or help support, you know, future development.
Etherton probably turns out like center, like people selling the older homes
Yep.
and newer houses going in with nice acreage there and everything too, you know.
Yeah, so that would be the idea. And if anybody were to build on that site along Etherton, we would require along their frontage to make those improvements.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks.
All right, anything else on this topic, city administrator?
Other than that, that seems to be good, but we will pick around those three that were mentioned, and we'll come back to the committee here with those two different versions. We'll have it scored within the groupings, but then we'll also score it via the 1 through 18, and we can kind of show that difference. And from there, we would actually start getting that direct feedback from the committee. But the one thing too with this matrix is that once we have it all scored out, staff's completed their part. If the committee wanted to go through and score it themselves, or we can definitely provide the Excel document that has the equations already coded in there. So that all you have to do is go in, and you can almost use a little cheat sheet. And if you wanted to do it on paper, we'd be more than happy to take your answers and input it. That actually is helpful, because then we could take that and average it out and actually say, hey, we've heard from 6 council members on this project and the average score was this. So all that is helpful. But the first step is making sure we all, feel like these are important criteria and good weights, that the method is good. If the method's good, then the rest can kind of be worked out over the next 2 months.
So I wonder if we might not benefit from getting an initial stab at the
Yeah.
rankings and so on with the information that you provide, and then we can make adjustments as I guess we so desire. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Because they'll have a certain perspective that we may not have.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so are we finished on that topic?
Yes, we are.
All right, very good.
Let me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just say when you do, but when you send that out to council for us to review it, just give us like a couple of weeks to review it, not like 3 days over the weekend. But
Yeah.
that's a lot to get in, and it's
Especially how.
scoring methodology that we used to do, obviously, a lot. And
Simple out there.
we bought
Yeah,
some
some-
software or something, and it's not something you wanna fly through in 5 minutes.
100%. And that's the reason why we wanted to bring it up now too. So we, technically, this will be incorporated into the budget where we'll actually be getting to that review. We'll actually be looking at that in more of a final form in October. So there will be the score that comes back at the next month meeting. And then you'll have that from that time all the way to pretty much October.
Okay.
To start finalizing opinions. But quite frankly, the changes can be made to the budget up until the ordinance is passed and even after that. But nonetheless, it should be done prior to the second reading.
And before we do any scoring on things, could you, I've been here a long time, so I know what these projects are, but some of these new council members don't know the details on these projects. So if you could reference someplace with a web link to the project information so that they can go see what that project is about, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. And we
That way they can score with more information on hand.
certainly.
Without having to go searching for what it is.
Yeah. The search tool that we have on our website is awful. Sorry,
You mean leave room for improvement?
no, I'm gonna be blunt. So,
And one thing though, I know this isn't a great workaround of that, but the weird thing about the website, and it's a little off topic, but this is a good tool. If you were using like Google or whatever your search engine is, if you search that same thing that you're looking for, but you just put City of Wildwood, Missouri, and then whatever it is, it actually, Google does a better job of
Google
finding
does
those
it better?
pages.
Okay,
As long as you put the key factor is putting City of Wildwood and then whatever you want to talk about, but City of Wildwood, then the subject matter, it actually does a better job. What this website does, which has always been a conflict point, because it's going to show the page that has gotten the highest number of visits.
yeah.
And it doesn't change that algorithm on the back end. And that means if you had, say, a really popular program or a really popular document that was published back in 2017, but it might not be the most recent document, it's gonna show that if it has, it depends on the number of views and the amount of time people are spending on it. But that, unfortunately, it almost looks at it like a YouTube type model versus,
Yeah.
hey, give us the most refreshed data. And we've tried to go in there and it's troublesome because it goes backwards. So newer documents are getting the treatment of, hey, we want to do it based off release date, so when it was published. But nonetheless, some of the older documents, the archive documents, before we did the updates, they're still showing up based off that number of
Okay.
views. But City of Wildwood, Mo, and then
Oh, once you put the
include-
Mo in there, you're gonna end up with some.
you'll end up with Florida or New Jersey.
Yeah.
New Jersey, yeah.
That does happen too.
I tend to get searched more than some of this.
I don't know why.
Thanks, Thomas.
We are the bigger.
Alright, so that wraps up that particular issue, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so then we move on next to, let's see here, it's the review of the procurement process for independent auditing services. Action item here, the current agreement for our auditor, which audits the city's books basically runs through December 31st of 2026. We are, I guess, basically satisfied with the current performance of our
Yes.
auditing firm, but city code requires us to review this every so often.
That is correct.
Yeah,
So there's,
turn it over to
this, and I want to make sure that, especially, and the auditors always know about this too. These are provisions in the charter, so it's not a surprise, but we are satisfied with the work that Reuben Brown's been doing. They've been the one, they're actually gonna be presenting the next week's council meeting with the annual comprehensive financial report. But nonetheless, our code pretty much offers that you go out to bid every 4 years. Usually it would be just for the next year, and then you can have an option to do 3 additional. So that will be included. We're gonna be putting together the RFP and actually have most of it done. We're about to publish that. We plan to come back with responsive proposals in September. So that's the current timeline. And then once it's approved at committee, then we would still need to take that to the full city council and then have an ordinance read. So the goal would be to have the agreement in place for whomever is able to be responsive, but also provide the most competitive and qualified proposal by the end of this year, kind of concurrently with our budgeting process. So I just wanted to make clear that it definitely isn't Reuben Brown being you know, they've done a great job for us, but we need to go out and do this process every 4 years.
Councilmember Owen.
So Reuben Brown will be on the list again this year bid.
So, yeah.
And then who are the other
So there
firms? Have
are-
we selected them?
We have not selected them yet, so if there's any recommendations tonight, we'd be happy to send it to them, but the plan will be, we're kind of getting started on this. We have the majority of the RFP done, and if we want, we could come back with like a list that we plan to send it out to next month. We could still meet that timeline. It typically could be published for 30 days. But I'm trying to think here. Yeah, we could do that if you want
I
to.
just wondered who else were we going out to, you know, I'm assuming we're probably not gonna go out to the big four if they're too expensive for us, but who else are we going out to that's of equivalent size and cost to a Reuben Brown? Chris would probably have some thoughts on that, and I would say your city treasurer, Tony Scroy, would probably have some input on that.
Yeah. So in that case, would we want to maybe bring this back at the next meeting with the kind of the list and get it tailored down from everybody?
I'd say review it with the city treasurer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And get his recommendations and send it out from there.
So in that case, then tonight, we're just acknowledging this, and then the department would just be recommending that, hey, review with the city treasurer for the list, and then come back with the responsive proposals and then a recommendation on what to do for fiscal year 2026 and then moving forward.
So are you gonna talk with other cities who they use?
Yeah, we'll go, yes, we'll do that, and then, the plan would be we would not submit, but we'd send out like, hey, we're collecting proposals for this service. We'd send that to a group of different agencies throughout that specialize in this area. You do want them to be somewhat localized. They have to have their license here in Missouri. So nonetheless, we would go back and I will say most cities around here, they do use Reuben Brown, but we'll go out and find multiple individuals.
Any other questions for the city administrator or comments, suggestions? City administrator, what do you need from us in terms of a motion on
In
this?
this case, I guess the only thing would be I don't think we need a motion on this.
Okay.
In this
Right.
case, as long as everyone's comfortable here with us proceeding, kind of like in the soft way of publishing this and then coming back with recommendations, and no action would be necessary.
All right, very good, thank you. Moving on to Public Works status report on city improvement projects. So I guess for this one, we move over to Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Council members, this next item is a repeat monthly item we've been putting together for a while now. So it's a summary of our current projects that we have underway, either under design or construction in the city of Wildwood. I didn't intend to go through the whole list. I'm certainly available to answer any specific questions, and I would note that we are going to talk about 3 of those projects next on the agenda. So other than those 3, if you have specific questions that you'd like to bring up, we would certainly be happy to answer them. Brendan, is there anything you can think about mentioning?
No. Yeah, like you said, we're gonna go in depth on 3 of them, so if there's any other questions on the others that are on here, feel free to ask.
So has everybody had a chance to take a quick look at the list, and are there any questions that can be answered prior to Mr. Brown going into detail on the 3 that Councilmember?
This is something I thought about yesterday, driving down 100. The signs from last year, completing fall 2025. Do those typically take a while to come down because they're still up halfway through the year here?
We've requested that I know which one you're talking about
Right.
too, the one that's on 100 coming
Right.
into the city. Yeah, we've requested from MoDOT to have that sign removed twice now, so we'll
Okay.
get back on it. But that said, that is not the city sign. We didn't put that.
No, I know that. I just talked to, I'm sure it's the highway department, right?
It is
I just noticed it driving yesterday. It's like, oh.
a little outdated.
You could go out there tonight and put a little completed sign.
Right,
there.
right. Check mark.
Yeah. I
And
would say Councilmember Dodwell.
just one other issue. Thank you very much for getting county back out to work on lights that went off after the weekend storms and get them fixed.
Councilmember Owen.
The 109 project, is that still in pace to be done fall? Seems like it's set for a while and nothing was really going on.
There's been a little bit of lack of progress there, but I would say it's still on schedule. They have plenty of time to finish it. They've not said anything.
Which project?
109 BA.
Yeah, I mean, they're still working.
Yeah, it seemed like for a while, there was a lot of activity there on the BA coming into 109, and then it looks like the last several times I've gone by there, there's been no activity, so I didn't know if we had any issues going on with that of some kind.
They have some paving that's coming next on 109, and that's where you see them pour the curb and gutter adjacent to the roadway. That's the next thing, is to to get the asphalt placed for essentially the widening of 109 in that area. And once that gets completed, that's the next shift. The major shift is to push traffic into phase 2. So north and southbound traffic will move kind of to the west side of that roundabout, and they'll be basically going around part of that roundabout to free up the space to build the east half of it. It'll be a little bit wonky, if that's a good term, for a bit when we do that. But hopefully we'll get through that in short order. But I'd say we have no reason to believe they're not still scheduled to get it done this fall.
It's been pretty wet.
Mr. Brown, you had, at one point in time, there was some talk that I believe it's called Smith School Road, which is in back of the temple there, might be used for like traffic temporarily or something of that sort. Are there any plans to do that, or is that not necessary?
It's currently being utilized as the detour on the BA
Right.
northbound.
Okay, but you won't need that in terms of like north-south traffic at any point in time, correct?
There's no plan to use it other than as is current.
Okay,
at this
all right,
time,
perfect,
yeah.
all right.
And then the plan when we complete construction is to sever that section of Old Etherton Road beyond the Durga Temple essentially. So you will not be able to access 109 from it. So it'll be a dead end road. And the thought is, once we get the roundabout completed, they'll be able to take advantage of the new intersection and the easier access that you have. And the current connection, as you probably know, is a very poor angle.
Right.
And it's not conducive to a safe location at all. And I think the best thing would be to sever it, essentially make it a street that serves the Durga Temple. Technically, the former church on the other side could have access from it. But not allow through traffic on it anymore.
That's a good idea.
And I think I got the names of the roads incorrect.
It's Old
Smith School
Etherton.
Road's a little further down.
Yeah, it goes
Old
down
Etherton.
pond, it goes BA to pond.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Congratulate Tom on the railroad crossing. However, it wasn't done right.
Oh. Well, we didn't do it.
I know you didn't, but they should have put a tie outside of the rails that parallel the track there. Instead, they put the asphalt up against the rails again, which will make it rough. It's a lot better than it was, but I'm just letting you know from my experience. Where's this? I used to handle claims on railroad
You
crossings.
sound like you
I
got
actually
some
went out there,
specialty
yeah,
experience
to
here.
take pictures of bad crossings.
Centaur Road.
We only have, yeah, yeah,
Sounds
that's pretty rough.
Yeah.
And you had said, could you repeat that too? You said usually, so they have I had noticed the asphalt was up against the track, so you're
Right.
saying that the better.
There should be a timber. The railroad's responsible for a foot outside of that rail. And it's a lot better than it was, but it wasn't done right. According to standards I know.
The other thing I'll say on that is they've left a lot of material around. Excess material, are they going to haul that off with big piles of gravel all over the place?
Yes, they were.
That-
That, so that's part of, and just to
Throw
FYI
in
too,
there.
that is a county road, county permit. That said, we kind of prefaced it, had requested that the work be done because of the large dip on that northbound lane. That said, the county won't let them close that out. Material comes back, but we will reach out to them to see what the approach was there and see if there's I don't know if there'll be a way to get them to do it, but that would be nice if they could put in, Mr. Krantz said, a timber there to keep the longevity.
I'm just passing that on. It's a lot better than it was. They did a lot of work on it. Brand new track in there, so. Wish they would have done it right.
You would think. We'll reach out to them and then for the removal, we'll be keeping them as well.
So I just have to, when I turn off Centaur, I gotta scoot up even further now to see around the pile of gravel. Yeah, that's my neck of the woods.
It's pretty messy over there.
Okay, Mr. Brown, I think we're to you now for the update on the 3 projects.
Thank you, Chair, council members. So the first item is Main Street Extension Project. It's an informational item. We wanted to give you an update and especially on this one, Brendan, you might want to pull that up. It's in the memo, or maybe pull the strip map of the design if you can, because that does show a lot. Just wanted to provide an update and answer any questions relative to the Main Street Extension Project. I mentioned it earlier. It is a project we're working with our civil engineering firm CDI on finalizing the right-of-way plans and also the utility adjustments at this point in time. You might pull the colored version up. You can, Brendan. This is a long, from the perspective of the department, I think Joe Vlinich would agree, it's kind of a long planned project, part of the town center master plan. It's been envisioned for some time. It builds on 3 completed projects essentially. East of here, we've obviously rebuilt Main Street out to this point. And then on the other end through Main Street Crossing subdivision, that was platted and constructed more recently. And then the last improvement was the roundabout on 109, which the city funded as well. So three steps have been completed. The last step would be this piece of the improvement. The plan is to match in general the roadway between 109 and Etherton Road. So it would be a divided road with 1 lane of traffic eastbound, 1 lane westbound. The only thing on this segment, we've tried to taper and widen out the median width and provide a crossover in the middle for U-turning vehicles, or at least to provide some width so that you can make a U-turn in a passenger car, maybe a pickup truck. And that location was selected because it was the location shown under the prior development plans that were submitted to the city. We had a plan on the north side by McBride Sons to develop single-family homes. And then, as you all know, I think on the south, Latitude North 38 has had a number of proposals in front of us. And more recently, they've got one in front of City Council on appeal. So the thought was it would line up, and if we were providing our opinion of where to put a break, that was a good spot to do it. So that's where we have it right now. Again, with that break was if you're coming from Taylor Road and you wanted to utilize the Village Green, you've got an easy way to make a U-turn potentially and use the on-street parking that we will be putting in front of the Village Green with this project. So that's the main scope of the improvement. Stormwater is one of the issues we are wrestling with right now. We are planning to meet all the MSD requirements for stormwater design, as any private developer would as well. That is going to require underground detention. At least that's what we're proposing to do on this project. We put underground detention in with the Village Green. And so essentially we'd be building on that same concept. Civil design is working now with the consultant with the phase 2 of the Village Green, the all-inclusive playground, and with coordination with North 38 or Latitude North 38 on stormwater from a holistic view of the essentially three development projects, including City Hall. So I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but we're trying to pull all 3 projects together and look at them as one essentially relative to stormwater management and approach MSD from that perspective so we can do what makes sense overall for the 3 improvement projects instead of trying to focus each one individually. So that effort is going on in line with our design efforts on this improvement project. I want to make a few points about right-of-way. As I think you know, Crestwood is a private street currently. So as we improve this road and make it a public street, we will have to acquire the right-of-way for Crestview Avenue, make it a public right-of-way. And then additionally, I think you know, there is a need for a strip of right-of-way on the north side and the south side. So Latitude North 38 moves forward. I think they've indicated a willingness to dedicate the right-of-way at the minimum for the Main Street project as we show it. At one point, we were expecting McBride to do the same on the north side of the road. So if there is a development on the north, we'd like to see that they dedicate the right of way. If there's not, we'll have to be in a position to pursue right of way acquisition with those private property owners. So we're trying to move forward with our right of way plans so that we would be positioned to start that effort shortly. Utility relocations, just a couple comments there. The Ameren pole line that's out there on the north side of Crestview would have to be relocated. Currently, we plan to relocate it just to the north of the trail that runs on the north side of the road. I didn't mention that, but we do have a 10-foot wide path / sidewalk on the north and a traditional sidewalk on the south side of the road. And that's consistent with Main Street west of Crestview as it currently was, as it was more recently constructed. So Ameren's poles would be relocated. Since this is a private road and we don't own the right of way and these utilities are not on public right of way, we will be required to pay the cost to relocate them if that's necessary. So one disadvantage here, we'll have to be responsible for those costs. So those pole relocations for Ameren would be out of our pocket, unfortunately.
Most expensive roads.
Yeah, so
On a quick note on that too, Rick, if you don't mind me interrupting. Typically though, I just want, because I know this was requested at a former meeting, that state legislation that was being reviewed about moving poles and whether or not cities would have to reimburse Ameren, that legislation didn't pass. The reason why this one would cost the city money is because we'd be taking over a private road to make the improvement. So it's part of what initiates the act, if you will. But say this was a road that was already owned by the city and we're just making an improvement to it, we had to widen it. In that case, Ameren would cover the cost until the state changes the law, which as of right now, it hasn't been. So good news on that front, but not for this project. Sorry to interrupt.
Councilmember Albers, did you have a
So-
question?
Yeah, just a statement here. I've been in a few meetings with Mr. Vunich and Mr. Bosworth on a new design. Rick, have you seen the new design for Latitude?
yes, I believe I have. And
Right. So it's, instead of having like the bend in it, it's gonna be a straight shot. And that's gonna help give us access to the playground. And then the only entrance and exit would be off Etherton then.
That is correct. So that's what they had proposed. I can give a
Right.
rough visual. So they practically came in and before it kind of went in and stayed everything on their property, where it kind of curled around. But now the one drawback of doing it that way, when it comes down and then there's a portion of this, I would say this cul-de-sac looking item that has actually, I think it's 24 parking spots included on that side. That would be right up against, it would be over the property line here. It would tie into the city's property, but that would service the all-inclusive playground that's going in right here.
Right.
So nonetheless, that obviously has to be considered by the council as part of the appeal process and whatnot, but that would in theory solve kind of our timing issue because we do have this playground coming in. And the problem right now is the closest space you have for say you have the playground that gets built to completion. You have an individual that has ADA needs, they technically would have to park over here and still it's technically ADA accessible in the sense that it's all level flat. You can get on this property here without going upstairs, but they would have to go around the full circle to get to the park. So that would kind of cut in, but it wouldn't have a secondary access to Main Street and would not include improvements done on Main Street.
You know, I'm gonna pass this. I actually have a copy if you guys wanna take a look at it and
Well, that
get it. I just forgot I had it. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And just get it back to me, please.
So what's new on this?
It goes straight instead it was going like to the right. And the entrances, exits will be here instead of anything there. And then that gives us access to the
So are these houses gonna back, Crestview?
no,
From Crestview, you would see like the front door, you wouldn't see the garage. The garage is gonna be internal to the interior road that they're building.
So the houses will face Crestview?
yes,
Yes,
So he changed that?
yes.
Is he gonna pay for his portion of Crestview?
that
That's,
is not proposed
that's,
this time. What they're proposing is this parking solution. That's not Main Street though.
that's the one thing that's still out there.
So is that more up to date, Mr. Brown, than what you have up here on the screen?
Oh, yeah.
well, we did not show, either North,
Here, Chris.
Latitude North 38 or the playground in our view just yet. We are coordinating and.
This is just the road, so this is main, so that has no bearing technically on the configuration of the road. The stormwater could be considered, but that drawing would have to become, we could once it's all done, we can put all these together into
Okay.
one, but
All right,
we're
that's
still
fine.
kind of wrapping them all.
Okay, Councilmember Crans, I know you have expressed concern in the past regarding parking along this street, so.
Right, I'm suggesting there should be parking in front of Village Green. Are we talking about Bosworth or we're talking about Park?
The parking's right there.
Yeah, but is there parking in front of the?
Yeah, those light blue things, those are parking spaces.
Okay,
Yeah.
don't know.
I thought that-
I thought that was just the park, not the playground.
Well, this is, yeah, the playground's down here.
playground's in here.
There is, right.
I was guessing that was the case, but I didn't see the key up there. Right.
This will be an ADA
Okay.
Yeah.
roadway,
So there
so.
will-
My only concern is that we have plenty of parking. If we need to make sure we have parking. If this is gonna be.
This is completely new here.
We got concerts.
Yeah.
That is completely new.
Right.
So just a note, and these trails, this trail network over here, kind of don't
Don't
picture
go
that.
by it.
Yeah, don't go by that. That was just, they circumvented a CAD file from the Village Green and it's not reflective of the true, what ended up being there. That said, you can almost picture the playground being located right here, in this area. And what we originally had to do is almost like an off-beat shoot of it would be to have some type of like drive aisle built off here and have some type of parking structure placed on this side. And then you'd have direct access to the park at the bathroom facility right here, which is gonna add a ton of cost to the project. What this developer has proposed in their subsequent provision
Yeah.
is that, hey,
We
you know,
wanted the
we're gonna take care of your
Front for
parking
them
needs. You
to
don't
be-
have to deal with this.
Main Street.
We're gonna actually just build it straight through, have it overlap here, and then your
Yeah.
parking is directly connected to the park there.
Right.
So they're solving our parking problem with us in lieu of they're giving us the right of it in lieu of dedication.
So they're gonna be
There's the
here.
parking in
Yeah.
the circle, and there's the playground.
This is latitude and 38 here?
Yeah, this property, this property, this property. and this
Okay.
property.
The houses will face the front
To
of
the
the
street.
Yeah, I can maybe show you.
And
This will help
here,
So the-
all the garages.
A little bit here.
Main
This'll-
Street,
I think
main,
that
main,
actually might
there,
fit
there we
perfectly.
go. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It
All the
actually
garage.
helps.
That looks like, this is a lot here.
Yeah.
Surprised
That
they want
is-
to do that, and have all that city traffic coming down behind all of those.
That's true. Well, that said, I mean,
What do
think
you
of it like
mean?
this.
Well, I mean,
This would be
all of a
running-
sudden all these people have all this traffic coming. down,
Right.
Parking for that. I'm shocked they want to do that.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
That would
to me.
deter me from wanting to buy one of those properties.
Absolutely, I agree.
Rentals. They are rentals.
That's.
Well, I'm just telling you.
In
Well, that's
this,
what they're trying to sell.
Uh,
Look at, we're working with.
and I know this is kind of off that topic, but in this, you'll see that there's a small parking pad. It's kind of been drawn out here. If you have this, you can eliminate that, which does save the city considerable cost.
And there's parking.
There would be, we'd still have the catty corner, parallel parking here,
Right.
but the ADA parking would be
Right.
effectively replaced with this roundabout structure.
So Tom, why don't they take that back to planning and zoning?
That's it.
Wait, why do you think it's like the
Why
planning
don't
and
they
zoning?
take it back to planning and zoning?
They've taken to planning and parks. That appeal is still up though, and that's something if the committee was.
But if this is a new plan, can't they go back to,
They could in theory.
why should the city council bother with it? It's not completed, why?
I can ask with the city attorney to.
I mean, that's
But
what I thought.
technically, the way it's being performed now is that in September at that appeal, at the appeal, you'd have to review the original proposal and they could propose like, hey, we're gonna do this and this. That said, it would technically, it would have to go back and do it all again if they want.
I don't know, we just seem to keep kicking this can down the road and not allowing the developer to come up with a system plan, but anyway. It's my opinion.
Okay,
So more coordination to follow with both potentially latitude north 38 and certainly the playground. Well, so we didn't reflect that on here yet, but
Yeah.
that's ongoing.
okay. So I guess, Mr. Brown, we should circle back to you and let you continue.
So I think I'm pretty much wrapped up with my comments. If there's any other questions you have for me right now, that would be fine. I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, great, good discussion, everyone, on this topic. So, there's nothing more to suggest or comment on. We will go on. Next, we are going to be discussing the, let's see. I guess it's the Old State Road Shared Use Path.
Correct, yep, yep. Chair and council members wanted to also provide you an overview of the Old State Road Shared Use Path project. This will construct a new 10-foot wide shared use path. I think you're aware of the project on the west side of Old State Road between Nantucket Island Drive up to Old State Place. It's a project that is intended to fill a gap that exists with regard to any pedestrian or bike facilities on Old State Road where none exist currently. Once this project is complete, you will have a facility that runs all the way from Nantucket Island Drive all the way up to Ridge Road, actually all the way up to frankly, to Manchester Road. Because there are sidewalks on the remainder of Old State. So it's regionally, I think is a pretty good project from that perspective. And if you're not aware, Old State Road is an arterial roadway that is maintained by St. Louis County. It is not a City of Wildwood roadway, has a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, and just want to make sure you're aware of that. T Hill Construction is our contractor on the improvement. They were awarded the project in December. And Cochrane is doing construction engineering services for us on a separate agreement that was awarded by the council in December of 2025 as well. So they are on board and progressing. Now, because it is a county roadway, some of the improvements are within county right-of-way. And for that reason, we were required to formally submit and request a special use permit from St. Louis County to cover that work. That has been completed. It did take a bit to get through that effort and to essentially get the permit issued, but we do have it in, right, Brendan?
Yes.
But I wanted to make a couple points about that because it didn't go as well as we'd hoped. County did make a very comprehensive review of the plans, and we had to make some changes at their request, most of which were we were amenable to making, and they were not major changes by any stretch. But the one issue that did come up was a review of the crosswalk locations. When we originally started this project, we proposed a crosswalk in the middle of Lakeshore Meadows Drive. Because of the subdivision across the street, there was quite a few homes in that subdivision. That was a very logical place to have a crosswalk. During the public meeting, there was concern and request for a second crosswalk with rapid flashing beacons at Lake Country Lane. So more towards the south end of the improvement, closer to Old Fairway, is Lake Country Lane. It's a smaller, large lot subdivision, not as many homes as the other. Nonetheless, we went forward and added that crosswalk to the plans. Both would have signs and rapid flashing beacons at both locations. But in their review, the county said that the Lake Country Lane crosswalk did not meet their warrants. They have policies in place that require a certain number of users for the crosswalk to be warranted. And they also said based on, we had to provide a site distance study for them. They said that the site distance was not sufficient, did not meet their standards. So based on those two reasons, right now, that crosswalk at Lake Country Lane is not part of the improvement project. I know we have residents in that subdivision who are very concerned about this and not happy with that situation. I think there is an opportunity for us to appeal this with the county. And we've not done that just yet, but I think that is the intent, at least from the staff side, to repeal the decision and get more clarity on whether there is an option or not to change that decision. But nonetheless, that's where we stand right now.
Can't they move from Old Country Lane down to the light? That is the flashing beacon that is approved?
No way it goes down.
There's no sidewalk on it?
There's no
Okay.
sidewalk on
Okay,
that
because it's on the
side.
north to south side, sorry.
They could, I mean, they would have to technically cross, well, at that point, they cross the street, so
Yeah.
that's the issue of concern. I think there are 24 homes in that subdivision, Rick, so that.
Yeah.
That said, there has been a very vocal group of residents that obviously pushed for that to begin with, and I think is, important. We already have it, we're already building it over there. And one thing is too, the county's kind of coming at just a little bit late in the game with this type of change. So nonetheless, we can go to the county and try to make this appeal, but we wanted to make sure that the committee was aware of it. Because right now, as the county stands, they would say that you can't have that second crosswalk. The rest of the project's fine, but that one crosswalk with the flashing beacon at Lake Country Lane, they are not giving us their blessing.
How many, do you know the number of people that live down
24.
off that road?
I think you're right, it's probably
24.
24 homes.
24, okay. And most of those properties are like 10 acres, aren't they?
They're larger lots.
Yeah, they're huge.
Yeah.
But if it's unsafe, I mean, that's the
So,
issue.
and well, just to be clear, so that it's a unique scenario, so it's not unlawful to cross the road there. It would be considered a lawful crossing, it's just not a legal, it's a legal crossing, it's just not a marked crosswalk. So we're not prohibiting anybody from crossing the road there. It's just that the county policy is not to stripe a crosswalk at that location because it's not going to be utilized very significantly. And that's a policy they have in
Right.
place.
Plus the side view is not good, right?
Well, based on the review, it could be better. I feel it's sufficient, but it's certainly at the minimum, right? So the argument I think we would have is that, and this is what I personally feel, is if we put the crosswalk in with the beacons, it would be safer. And probably a better situation overall. County has to look at it from their policies and the fact that they manage a large system of roads.
So if you did appeal it, it's not gonna go anywhere, right? Is that what you're saying? If it's their policy, they're gonna say no?
I guess what I would tell you is these things tend to be policy engineering driven. And not whoever screams the loudest, frankly. So I know that the residents are gonna scream loudly and they certainly can do that. I don't know how much effect that will have. We can bring it up with county senior staff, we can bring it up with Joe Colessa. Cause I think the frustration on our end was it was approved initially. And we discussed this location in the crossing with them, with their staff, and it was approved. Now, they came back and said, well, that was a conceptual approval. We weren't clear about that. They went into a more detailed analysis and came back and said, no.
Who do you appeal to?
So
Colessa?
we would probably bring it up with Mr. Colessa, yeah.
So he's already said no, right?
No, so this review is done through their permit group,
Oh, okay, all right.
which I'm sure ultimately reports to Mr. Colessa. So we haven't,
Who are all engineers?
they're all
Yeah, so
engineers
they-
and it's an engineering
Well, Mr.
organization.
Colessa's a reasonable guy. I've talked to him before.
Yeah, he is, and Stephanie is very reasonable. They treat us very fairly.
Yeah.
They're not out to do anything. I mean, their goal is like our goal. Ultimately, we're all trying to do the right thing. It's just that, when they have these policies in place, they
Can't
put them in place for their overall good for an entity that manages a large system. It doesn't always filter down to these type of locations, unfortunately.
It may not
Give it a
have the
try.
desired flexibility to
I say give it a try.
The only other item I was going to mention to you relative to this improvement is we are working through some issues with water and gas lines. Towards the south end of the improvement, we went through and located the depths on existing utility lines to make sure we had sufficient cover. Finding that, and unfortunately, this is not unusual, I think the gas line is shallow enough that we may have to adjust the grade of our trail. It's the thought right now. The engineer is looking at this. He's supposed to provide us information any day now relative to a potential change in the grade of the trail. To make sure we have the minimum cover that we need on the gas line. So that's something we're working through right now. Hopefully we'll have direction on that
We did receive updated plans and
Okay. today.
contractor's gonna hopefully start work again very soon.
Okay.
Plan.
So there hasn't been much direction.
Basically raise the path up some amount.
Yep, the utilities were shallower than what thought by the design consultant. So grade had to be changed.
Funny how those utilities get away with not doing what they're supposed to do.
Gas lines are notoriously shallow and
I had that when I built my house on water line,
And-
wasn't as deep as it was supposed to be, and therefore I had to adjust the grade of my driveway.
spectrum lines are notoriously shallow too.
Yes.
It happens. So I think that's most of the points I was gonna make. So we should see some more active construction here shortly with that change. If there's any particular questions you have, I'll do my best to address them, Brendan as well.
Any other questions for Mr. Brown? Okay, then we will move on to the update on Bridge 386 and 387 replacement project.
Chair and council members, again, this improvement project is another one we've been working on with our consultant CDG. We have two structures on Wild Horse Creek Road near Austin Fort Road. One is a bridge, one is a small stone box culvert that was constructed in 1940. Both are deficient and we plan to replace both to address those deficiencies. That section of Wild Horse Creek Road is a lower volume city arterial roadway. It's got a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. And the last traffic count we had showed an average weekday traffic volume of 1,360 vehicles per day. So Bridge 386 is the one-lane structure that's closest to Austin Fort Road. If you've been in that area, it is a one-lane road over the structure currently. 387 is the bridge that's further to the north. That was built in 1962. It's a 66-foot-long bridge. We're proposing to replace Bridge 386 with a 19-foot by 13-foot, 8-foot concrete box culvert, so it'll retain a box culvert shape, won't be a formal bridge. The Bridge 387 will become a 111-foot bridge, currently proposed to be a 2-span steel structure over Wild Horse Creek. 386 is not over Wild Horse Creek, it's over a tributary of Wild Horse Creek. But we do see a great deal of flooding in that area as a result of the creek. We do have right-of-way and easements to acquire for both improvement projects, which are federally funded. I counted correctly, we have about 5 property owners that will have to acquire property from. One of the larger impacted property owners is Mr. Craig Bidner, who owns most of the frontage along the west side of both bridges and some property on the other side as well. So we met with Mr. Bidner and had some discussions relative to the design. He's very concerned with the improvements and has expressed his concerns to us quite directly. So we have some work to do there potentially, and I'm sure there'll be more discussions in that regard coming. One of the things that I did want to mention was Babbler State Park runs along the east side of the improvement. I think you're aware of that. The original concept that we had for the Bridge 387 improvement project built the bridge closer to its existing alignment location. And because we're putting in a longer bridge, we're going from 66 feet to 111 feet. We end up raising the roadbed a bit and widening the channel out. And so the work to widen the channel out and even to put the embankment in pushed us into the park. And so it triggered the need to acquire an easement or permanent right away from Babbler State Park. Well, when you use federal funds, there's a section of the federal law that states that if a park was improved using federal funds, it triggers federal oversight. Essentially, the acquisition means the federal government has to approve it, and you have to mitigate against the impacts of your taking. So what we found from talking to other folks is that this is a very lengthy process. It takes several years to work through. And given that we might have to mitigate for our impacts, we didn't feel that was realistic or attainable given the timeline that we have with our federal funding. So we redesigned in current concept that we have put together, shifted the bridge more to the west. And frankly, the alignment is more on a straight line. The bridge previously was partially on a curve, now it's on a tangent. So it actually the new alignment removed some of the curvature in the prior road alignment that we had. It does shift the road closer to Mr. Bidner. He's not happy about that. He would like it to remain in its current alignment where it stands right now.
And so for those that don't live in this area, Mr. Bidner's driveway is here. And behind him, he's got 130 acres and his house sits on 11 way back. So he's concerned about the 30 feet that we're encroaching into his property on his doorstep. So that's the issue we're kind of dealt with there. As he does not want us to move the bridge from up here. Down here. So my guess is when we get to some open comments, he will probably come and make them. He's met with Rick and he's met with me. And he basically is not accepting of us moving the bridge at all.
Any of the residents around okay with moving the bridge?
Really, there's only one of the residents that's impacted, and they're impacted by the other bridge, the smaller
Yeah.
box bridge, but no one else is impacted by this because it only impacts his property to the west and the park to the east.
But they're impacted when it floods. So that was my question is, have we reached out to any residents that are unable to pass through that roadway? Because the bridge is compromised during flooding situations or whatever.
And Rick, I don't know if
Does
this
this
bridge is
improve that
necessarily gonna
situation?
improve flooding in that
Okay.
area.
Okay,
And that's one thing that's important to keep in perspective. So from the big picture perspective, this won't solve the flooding issues we have
Okay.
down there. So
that's why I
it,
asked.
from a localized standpoint, it should keep more water going in the channel and not going over the road around the bridge.
Yeah,
The current bridge generally does not flood, the approaches flood. So this will have more water pass under the bridge and it should have a localized effect, but generally the whole corridor is flood prone. And so down further near Pullman Road where it usually starts, it
Yeah.
won't have an effect.
How far did you say his house is set back?
So you can see.
Hundreds of yards. His driveway's several, he's
Wow.
probably
Okay. I didn't know if I,
300-400 yards from
wow.
his house is from the street.
Okay.
Yeah, he's substantially, he sits on 130 acres and his house is towards the back of it.
Okay.
He's my rear neighbor because my neighborhood backs up and he kind of wraps around.
So, Mr. Brown, these two bridges, what would be your estimated time frame as to their actual replacements?
You know,
Rough estimate, that's acceptable.
So based on the schedule, we need to start right away acquisition and get through that within the next, pretty much next year, would be the goal.
Construction late 2027.
And if we can get it
Yeah.
bid and under construction a year from now or late 2027, that would be state plan, yeah.
So I just do remember, we do have two proposed options, I think, and I've asked Rick and Brendan to look at how different they are in costs. This one is gonna cost the city 509,000, so I've asked them to look at what the other one cost us, and if it saves us substantial dollars, then I think we need to consider the other one. So maybe not quite as acceptable to the residents, but we got, if we can save hundreds of thousands of dollars, we've got to consider that.
One of the things that we did for Mr. Bidner was to propose a steel two-span bridge. Typically, the most cost-effective bridge is a concrete girder bridge. And what we would probably do from a cost-effective standpoint is a single-span concrete girder bridge in lieu of what we're proposing in this location. Now, what that does is it means the bridge is deeper, a little bit more embankment, the road goes up potentially, which was one of the objections Mr. Bidner had. So the steel structure keeps it shallow, it brings it down, matches closer to the current roadway grade. So that was a concession that we were gonna make. It is a more expensive bridge. Need to get a number so I can tell you exactly what we believe that number is. And I'll have that in the future, but.
Can we get matching money for that then?
So this is a federally funded project. So as long as we meet ODOT's requirements, we are eligible to be reimbursed for 80% of our costs for construction. The 500,000 is accounting for the
Okay.
reimbursement, 80% construction reimbursement.
And the other design met federal standards, correct?
Either way, we're intending to meet the federal standards, yes.
Yeah, we have almost over 2.5 million federal funding tied to this project. So it's just wanted to kind of highlight the critical importance of getting it done.
So you're saying we build a better bridge if we go with a girder bridge?
Well, we would build a lower roadway, less embankment, be closer to matching the existing roadway. So that was one of Mr. Brenner's concerns, was that we were bringing in fill and embankment, raising it up about 3 feet with the concrete bridge. Now there's probably a foot roughly of fill height or differential, more or less. So it brought the road down to match the current grade. It's a shallower structure because it's steel versus the concrete is a
No. You don't have a problem with doing that then, do you? Or is there-
Well, the steel structure is a more expensive bridge. That's
Okay,
what
we're talking
saying.
about cost.
The question is it really worth it? And I think if Mr. Bidwell doesn't want to negotiate, that's really what he's told us more lately. Probably something we'd want to reconsider doing, frankly, is spending the money on the more expensive bridge.
If we get our money back, right? Or it's paid for by the feds, right?
Well, that is the thought is 80% of it will be paid by the federal government. So
Does that extend the life of the bridge itself and the waterway
It's
through?
easy.
Does the steel hold up better than the concrete is the question?
not necessarily. I mean, some would say that you'd be better off with a concrete girder bridge over the long run. Because the steel might need to be painted, or it might be more inclined that you'd have more maintenance, higher maintenance costs down in the
Yeah.
future. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Brown?
So the only other thing I was gonna mention is we do want to do a quick analysis of large vehicle usage. This pertains mainly to the smaller structure, Bridge 387. 386, sorry, I don't know, I actually thought that. 386 at Austin Fort Road. So we need to do that. We're gonna need to authorize a separate agreement with our consultant CDG. That analysis would evaluate the passage of larger vehicles, particularly what we typically would do is a large semi-tractor trailer truck. The concern is we have a number of folks that have horse trailers in that area clearly, and we want to make sure we're designing, we have covered the fact that they are out there and using the intersection, and they don't have any issues navigating the intersection. So that is a reasonable thing to do, and we should do it. And so we would like to move forward with a separate agreement with CDG to do that analysis. There's a software program called AutoTurn that we utilize that runs the turning paths through the project and shows how the vehicle off tracks. And it basically shows us if we built enough pavement to allow the vehicle to stay in the lane or not. And so that will cost no more than $5,000, but I would like to get a motion from you if I can, authorizing that we do that study with the consultant. And I'm happy to report back on that, hopefully by the next meeting, if you are.
I'll make a motion that we approve that study.
All right, Councilmember Owen makes the motion. Somebody like to second, please.
I'll second that motion.
All right, Councilmember in seconds.
Read the motion.
I guess if you're in agreement, we'll have Mr. Brown sort of state what the motion is.
So the request or the recommendation is that the department work with CDG to complete a auto turn truck analysis for the Austin Fort and Wild Horse Creek Road intersection.
Up to $5,000?
Cost would not exceed $5,000, yes.
Councilmember Owen, you comfortable?
Yes.
Okay, all right, perfect. So we have the motion, the second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Brown, anything else from you?
For that item, no, that is fine.
Okay.
I think the next one might be inclined to take.
All right, so the next one, I believe, is the review of the intergovernmental agreement with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources for a proposed stream gauge monitoring station. And I believe this is at Pillman Creek, so this sort of ties in loosely with what we were just talking about. So, city administrator, do we turn this one over to Mr. Brown or to you?
I can take it. And Mr. Brown, more than happy to have your input on it as well. But that said, we are currently working on installing some signs on Wild Horse Creek Road that will notify residents or motorists specifically when there might be flooding conditions, when the creek rises to a certain extent. That was kind of the way we were able to. We had a discussion with the fire department last year, and a big concern was, hey, there's flooding that takes place off Wild Horse Creek. It does. That is one of the bigger concerns we have during the flash flooding components. There are some instances and some water rescues that have taken place, and the Monarch Fire Protection District definitely has raised the concern. They want as much stuff done as possible to have a better handle on when it's flooding and when it's not, which is understandable. That said, when we first discussed it, the USGS had come in, the National Geologic Survey had said, hey, we could do it, but it was gonna have a pretty hefty price tag associated with it. So one thing that the department looked into is, hey, we wanna make sure we can try to get residents to not go down that road when it's flooding so they can avoid being stuck in those situations. And it also helps with the public safety component because then you don't have firefighters down there trying to save them. That I think we've accomplished pretty well with the installation of this sign, but I will give some kudos here to the Monarch Fire Protection District. They kind of kept on the issue and eventually found a program and got a hold of someone with the state and specifically MDNR to have this other larger program that we would be a part of, where they would install a stream gauge monitor. It would be simple as just putting it on our existing bridge. It's not going to do, from what I've been able to see, and Rick can add some context here, but it doesn't seem like it would damage the bridge. It seems pretty light what they would be installing. They would install at Pillman near Wild Horse Creek, which would give you access to 24/7 to what the gauge is, what the water level is in that tributary leading into Wild Horse Creek. The benefit there is that we don't have that data currently, and this actually ties in. It's actually interesting. They, as we were talking with them, they showed us this website that they just created that shows not only what this gauge would be, but also across the state. They're installing these in multiple locations. So you'd be able to kind of look at it at any given time, and we'd be able to see and start correlating, hey, when it's at this level, that tributary is at this level, typically we've seen that there's some flooding that takes place over off Centaur. We could start making some connections. It's not perfect. The perfect idea would be to have gauges at multiple areas and be able to do a more comprehensive study, but MDNR is offering to do this at no cost to the city. They would install it, maintain it, and keep it there for perpetuity. The only thing the city would have to do is allow them adequate access. And one thing we discussed with them was that, hey, if you want to in the future upgrade it or change it out or do something along those lines, and specifically upgrade it where it require traffic closure or any type of traffic interruption, that we'd require a special use permit from the city side. Nonetheless, we would have to have an intergovernmental cooperation agreement because it's between two different entities. But truthfully, it's them installing a gauge on our bridge in our right of way and then providing access to the data. But the city is not at fault for any of the costs. So that's the true consideration. We do think this would be and it looks like it, no strings attached, which typically these do. They'll come in and say, we'll install it, you maintain it type deal. But it does seem like this is part of a broader project for them that they're collecting data on statewide, and it's part of a bigger program. So I would almost say it would be a shame if this isn't going to damage the bridge. It'd be a shame to miss out on getting this data because it does allow us at least one data point to start putting two and two together when we see flash flooding down in the valley portion along Wild Horse Creek.
So this is a win-win situation all around, it sounds like.
It to me, I mean,
Yeah.
it appears to be.
Okay, Councilman Rowan, I'm sorry. I
I
didn't
would say
mean-
right around the corner from this bridge, if you're going northbound, is where it floods across the road too. So
Yeah.
hopefully that data over time, we can figure out
That's
when
exactly
Pillman, when Wild Horse actually almost starts backing up under that bridge. Is that's when it's starting to cross over the road, just as you turn that corner where they've got the concrete poured to retain the bank, but then when the water gets high, it just uses that concrete as a way to come up over the concrete right onto Wild Horse. My wife had to turn back there on one of the heavy spring storms this year.
Yeah, that's why that
It's right
location
around
has
the
been selected, is it's
To
closest
the north of.
to that area. That seems to be the.
One of the worst places that floods just north of Pellman there.
And that's where it becomes helpful, because when we go out there, and right now, say we have a flash flooding event, we go out there, we'll see it. We'll make a notice, we'll put something out on social media, we'll try to put it on the website, we'll try to get the word out there. But what will be great here is that we'll be able to look at that online, see what that water level is, and just start putting two and two together, track it over time whenever we have an incident. Well, what was the gauge reading at? And then if we start seeing that gauge, just kind of keep an eye on it when we know what, it's been raining a lot. You can kind of tell when, and you can, the best example here, and this is not nearly to this level, but what they did over on the inundation map that they did down. Can you explain a little bit further on that, Rick?
Well,
But it's not
no,
nearly that, but
It's not nearly as
data-
comprehensive as the USGS was potentially able to do for us or could do for us in the future. There's no mapping
of
involved
course,
to visually show, what the flooding is expected to be and when it might occur, but
it's starting.
it's a start, and it's certainly, anything down there would be better than what we have right now.
What does it report back to? Does it send it
There's a
back to a
website.
phone or the website? Okay.
Well, they have a, I'm assuming some type of transmitter that it goes back to, but
Okay.
nonetheless, we'll have access. I mean, some other folks, the other governmental entities have this too. Just a web link online where you can track the gauge at any given time.
Okay.
That was one of our big questions too, because it didn't necessarily cover the data transmission, but since it's already public, very easy to track.
Okay. Do you need a motion?
Yeah, the motion requested from the department tonight would be to go ahead and recommend approval of this intergovernmental cooperation agreement. We did have a couple changes that we had made notes of that Rick had called out, so of that version, and then if the terms are agreeable, it might be come back to council in August, because they'll have to run it up their flagpole for the light changes, even though they're not substantive. But nonetheless, we would plan to have this come back to the city council in an ordinance form at the August meeting,
Is there any costs?
no cost.
Thank you.
All right, and so the motion you need from us, or you just described the motion?
Yep,
And
if that all
Councilmember,
sounds good.
Dodwell, you wanted to make that motion, basically?
Sure.
Okay, I didn't mean to put words in there.
That's fine.
Okay, and do we get a second?
Move it along.
Councilmember Alves. Okay, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, now we move right along to proposed code revision, right-of-way maintenance by property owners and city administrator. You and I spoke about this briefly a couple of days ago, but I'll let you go into the explanation for the group.
Yeah, and this one, you said this is maintenance of roadsides?
Yeah,
it is.
right-of-way maintenance by property owners, proposed code revision.
Yep, perfect. So last year we had discussed this, and this may be something that Rick wants to add some perspective on, because he deals with it on a more day-to-day basis, but I've definitely seen a little bit of it now. But nonetheless, last year we had talked about, and I'll just put this in more real concepts, day-to-day concepts. When we go out and do our concrete street slab replacement project, or if we're doing sidewalk work, what we find a lot of the times is that a resident may not have notified the city of a buried irrigation line that they have placed in the tree lawn, or they might have an invisible dog fence that might be placed in the tree lawn. They might have a brick mailbox that's placed right up against the actual street itself, so it doesn't have a buffer in between the two. And quite frankly, if you're moving out the concrete slab, it's gonna cause a lot of shaking and reverberation that can cause some damage. So there's a lot of these instances across the city, especially in the more densely populated areas of the city, where you've got private property placed within tree lawns in the right of way of the city. So when we go in to conduct work or carry out work, either on the street or in the sidewalk, or along the street trees too, we end up having situations where something gets damaged, and technically it shouldn't have been there in the first place, but nonetheless, the city is now on the hook for not only paying for the improvement that's taking place, but then to go back and to pay for a broken irrigation line or a tree. We've had issues where residents have claimed that their tree has been killed because the roots go underneath the sidewalk and whatnot. So there's a lot of different claims that come up. That said, the idea behind the amendment to the code that's being proposed tonight. And that would have to go to council, of course, for consideration. It's just more clearly defining these. We have some pretty big changes here, the first part, and then we'll get to the second part. Step one, we are actually putting in there that in the code, it already says you shouldn't put private, personal property in the right of way.
It doesn't allow it.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, there is no allowance for private property on the public right of way.
That's right. So right now, that's.
It's black and white.
It is. So right now, that's what the code says, but we get put into interesting situations where we get claims from residents that, hey, my dog fence was damaged, or really it's dog fences and irrigation lines.
You say sprinkler heads are the ones that I've heard from time to time, because the sprinkler heads are right out next to the curb in order to get all of that
Grass.
green space, yeah.
So that, I mean, and that's the drawback here. So there's a positive and a negative. Right now, they shouldn't be there anyways. This allows an exception. That said, it kind of guides how they should do it. And then also provides some coverage for the city that if it is damaged, it is on them unless we know about where it's at. But that does have its drawbacks because some residents may find that a little too harsh. They want to take care of the grass. We do want the tree lawn to look good. We want, the right of way to look good. We're not going out there and watering that grass. So there are benefits to having it watered. That said, with us not knowing that the irrigation line exists, or the dog, specifically dog fence, because quite frankly, if you have a dog fence that goes across a sidewalk, that's not a really good idea in the first place. That could cause other issues. That said, this kind of puts those exceptions into a little bit more fine point detail, while still kind of prohibiting them. But then the thing here too is get some direction. When we brought this up last year, the motion was, hey, we really shouldn't put something that's strictly prohibitive, because there are going to be those gray area cases where something was in the right of way, but they were doing it to help maintain the look and the aesthetic. We damaged it, we should fix it. But we wanted to bring this up because every year when we get into the concrete street slab work and we get into our sidewalk work, it just tends to pop up, and staff gets put into these weird spots where we have an invoice, someone trying to get repaid, and really it comes up, summer, right now, people are running their sprinkler, but what happens is maybe the sprinkler line gets hit in a project that we're doing in the early spring or in the winter more specifically, and they don't turn it on for a couple months, and all of a sudden the contractor's out of town, they're done. And all of a sudden their irrigation line's broken. They're gonna reach out to us. The contractor could say, hey, I didn't do that. It's been 4 months since I did it. So they're not gonna go back and make it as easy as a fix. Those happen all the time. We get probably about 5-10 of those a year. Rick, does that sound about right? I think that's correct. We get about 5-10 of these instances each year. And the staff is really just wanting some direction on that. This code would be a little bit more towards the restrictive side to say, hey, if you want to put these things out there, you gotta let us know, we gotta know where they're at, and we're not holding liability for you putting your personal property.
Question is that something covered by insurance if we damage somebody's irrigation system? You guys just call the insurance company up and they.
Yeah, so typically it's covered, we try to get it covered by our, not ours, but the contractor's insurance. So we tell them, hey, you go fix it. And if they're on site, that's great. But if not, that's when we would have to use our insurance. In some instances, it's not supposed to, the problem is it's not supposed to be in the right of way. So our insurance won't cover it. So if the law right now says you're not supposed to have personal property. So our insurance, when we call them and say, hey, our contractor hit this X thing in the right of way, they're going to say, well, we've been told, hey, your code says you're not supposed to put these in the right of way. So we're not going to cover it because that person shouldn't have it there in the first place. That's currently the insurance claim to us.
You're right, their argument. So you get a lot of claims then?
About 5 to 10 a year. I mean, that's a rough estimate.
year?
But yeah, they have, they do have.
Might be more.
And this just helps you, well, we wanna make sure the insurance company doesn't stick it to the city, right?
This would give, like, if folks follow the rules, and they provide us with documentation of where they're putting, some of these things, specifically irrigation, is a little bit.
So the attorney will bless this, right?
Yes, we're pretty sure the attorney will bless this.
Okay.
I think the intent, at least from the department's perspective, not necessarily to change what we're doing. We would still require, and we do require our contractors to repair these items when they're aware that they've done the damage. So I don't think the intent is to change that. It's just to have a fallback position to take to a resident. Ultimately, you've placed this with conditions on our right of way and it's your responsibility. So when those gray areas arise where we can't definitively say, and that's where we get into trouble, is where
Okay.
the contractor's not owning up to the damage.
Mhm.
We can't really know who did it,
Mhm.
but it was done by somebody and they're blaming the city. Well, I'm sorry, we don't have proof that our contractor did it. Sorry, property owner, you're responsible. If we can say that the contractor did it, we'll tell them to fix it and they will.
Did you settle that mailbox claim and what's?
Well, it's technically settled, but that's actually a great example here because that is a great example, because technically we don't have any code provision about that type of site, that type of mailbox. You've got a brick mailbox that technically shouldn't be placed in that way, right up against the concrete road. The problem is that mailbox being where it's at, there's no separation between that and the concrete slab that makes up the road. So when the contractor goes in to remove it, there's really, the question you have to ask is, did someone hit it, did the mailbox, which would be, yeah, contractor, that's your fault, you should fix it. Or the flip side, was it because we removed the entire street slab that's next to it, the reverberations from that movement, did that cause maybe a eroded mailbox to shift? That's kind of one of these gray areas that we're trying to
I heard
address.
the contractor's insurance turned her down.
That, because yes, in that instance that there wasn't
So-
proof. that-
And mailboxes are a difficult one too, because the ones that get damaged are usually not the new ones. They're the ones that are 25 years old.
Mhm.
And frankly, they're usually not in the best, they're old and they may be they're mailboxes that are likely gonna get hit or knocked over when the snowplow goes by. So we usually replace them. We do have the contractor go back and address it, but these expensive ones that might be 30 years old that are damaged, maybe because they're in disrepair and they're just old, or not necessarily entirely the contractor's responsibility. So this does help to shift that back to the resident to some degree. These are just, they are
All the
difficult.
space between the
situations.
sidewalk out to the street, city owned?
So sidewalk and then the tree lawn area,
Yeah,
yeah, that's city owned. So like they have a right to have a mailbox, of course.
yeah.
The
and
question that always gets brought up is what kind of mailbox is allowed? You never, and I would highly advise against putting anything that says, hey, you can explicitly put that type of mailbox in there because that could open up. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
Talk about a brick
what's-
mailbox.
I mean, the problem there is people go to put their mailbox in, and I agree, if you put the big concrete one in, but if you put a mailbox in, you can't put it, clear back on the other side of the sidewalk. The mailman's not gonna drop your mail.
Yep, and
So it's gotta,
Postal
it's gotta
Service
be right,
requires
be so close.
and that part's
So
fine.
then
If
we got a
they,
conflict with what, we want and what they want, so it makes it kind of difficult to say,
if it's
move
just
your
like,
mailbox out of the way when we can't.
no, we're
So
not
if
trying
I
to have.
We're not trying to
If
do
I
that.
understand this, what you want to do is basically clarify the code, but you're not necessarily trying to prohibit people from doing what they've always done.
Yep, we're just saying, hey, if something happens during our construction phase and it's not clear that our contractor did it, it gives us a fallback position to say, hey, you did put your personal property here in the right of way. We can replace your mailbox, but it's gonna be the standard, wooden post with the normal receptacle. We're not gonna pay $10,000 for the nice elaborate brick.
So I got one here, 3B, mailbox installation shall not result in a potential safety hazard for adjacent traffic. So basically, does that mean you can't put up a big stone mailbox because if someone drives down the road and runs into it, it's a safety hazard?
You're probably talking more about a mailbox that is.
My mailbox is, 18 inches wide, 24 inches deep, 4.5 feet tall, and if you run into it with your car, you're losing that battle. I may lose my mailbox, but your car is gonna get the brunt of it.
But
No,
you-
I'm
you
in the
expect
back end of
city-
a neighborhood where, it's not an issue, but,
Yeah.
somebody might wanna put a nice mailbox like that in on a busier street and.
On a busier, depending on the street, and Rick can attest to this, but I mean,
I
they
think the
should.
thought is if it's deemed to be a safety hazard, and that's obviously difficult to define, that we ought to have the ability to encourage it to be removed. If it's on the outside of a curve and somebody hits it, maybe it shouldn't be rebuilt. I'm not an attorney, but if I built one of those on a busy street, I would be a little concerned about the liability of it, because you're putting an obstacle along the side of the street that you just stated that they're gonna damage the car. And that's being done, but you're willingly constructing that obstacle on the side of the street. I don't know that we have liability on that. But I
Not
guess I
willingly
haven't
putting
asked
it
that
there to
question of
cause
the city attorney.
Damage to a vehicle. I'm putting them because I want a nice aesthetically looking mailbox on my property. Again, I'm way off the beaten
Yeah.
path.
Well, and I think
but-
that's the definition too. So there's a difference.
That's the concern. That's kind of where we're coming from, is that
Yep.
if it's a liability and it's a safety concern, then we should have the ability to say it should be removed or not rebuilt, say.
So if I live along Hutchinson Road, I guess that's not in our city, maybe. But even if you're on Old State, you got a house right on Old State, then I can't put that mailbox on Old State because it's a busy thoroughfare.
We wouldn't have that because it's a county road.
Yeah.
West Glen Farms, there you go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
West Glen
Westland.
Farms.
And certainly the intent is not on low speed, low volume roads, residential streets to do this. And I can't really pinpoint a location. And I think and I'm certainly open to discuss this further, but the instance I would think of would be if it got hit, it's on the outside of a curve, there's a crash history there, it just doesn't make sense to put it back. We should have some right to say that it shouldn't be rebuilt. It should be a traditional mailbox that's more of a breakaway style.
Yes. I guess I see the scenario where somebody takes a post, drives it, post straight up and down, they drive it right in next to the curb, and then there's an arm out from the post with a mailbox on it, and then that mailbox hangs out 2 feet over the pavement.
Yeah, I agree. That's a problem. I just think this particular language, if we're gonna do that, then you gotta go, everybody's got their house on the corner that puts big boulders on the corner, but people don't cut the corner and tear up their lawn, which is a pretty common practice for people that live in neighborhoods where everybody's cutting the corner and they're ending up with their grass torn up all the time.
Public street, that probably shouldn't be going on either.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
It's in their
That's-
yard. They put the boulders in their yard, not in the street,
It's in their
obviously.
yard.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
but
one-
Yeah, they should
there's a
have
right of way
right-of-way.
off of every yard or off of every street. There's a right of way that the city owns.
If there's, if
Councilmember
it's their
Krantz.
private property that, there's definitely a legal.
Especially in the right of way. So anyway,
Okay, so Councilmember Krantz wants to change the subject.
This is something I've been wanting to know. In this regards, maintenance of sidewalks, and I'll just read this. Any person owns property easement abutting said lot, clean, clear, and free of mud, silt, sediment, or debris from sidewalks, correct? You're responsible for all the debris, silt, mud on the sidewalks?
This is part two of the question here, but the idea here is, yes, the property owner, there is, and this is supported by our legal counsel, that you can most definitely say, hey, this tree lawn area and the sidewalk, you need to keep it clear, keep it clean, keep the grass cut in.
I think the average citizen
They do.
don't, but the thing that you don't say in here is snow. And
Is that by
are the
design
residents
purpose?
required to clear the sidewalk?
We
from
typically,
snow?
It does not say snow,
Yep.
it says mud, I believe, but
It
the
does.
intent is not to require snow removal.
So you don't have to shovel your sidewalk in Wildwood?
You don't currently, and the intent was not to add that.
Okay, I just wanted to know that.
right now too, I mean, when it snows, the priority is given to the streets, and sidewalks are typically given that.
So where I'm from, they will fine you. The mailman has to deliver the mail, and he has to have.
And we'll get you access to the mailbox for sure, because that's where the street comes in,
Yeah, that's
getting
good.
that clearance up.
All right, so you can keep your snow on your sidewalk.
I would check your HOA indentures in case, but I think, I don't know if they can
HOA?
legally do that.
Covers it.
Yeah.
Some
Ours
do.
doesn't.
Ours does.
Oh, it doesn't?
But I mean, kind of going back to this, there's not something, this major pressing issue that, once again, is kind of, or that led last year, but there's not a major pressing issue to have this addressed. It's not like we're, spending an absolute fortune on these types of issues. So if there are, we got some feedback tonight. If you want us to work on like the mailbox provision and some of the maintenance side of things, we can do that and bring it back. That said, you know, the staff is hoping to get something a little bit more concrete to say, hey, you know, our contractor does it, it's clear, we're gonna have them fix it, but on these little gray areas, these offset chances, that we have a little bit more fallback, if you will, like, hey, you did put that there knowingly and wittingly, it has consequences.
Councilmember Dodwell.
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the changes in the verbiage as outlined by the city administrator and the director of public works.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? By Councilmember Krantz. Any discussion?
And a lawyer will approve this, correct?
That's correct.
I just think we're, again, we've got private mailbox and public right of way that presents a safety hazard may be reviewed by the Department of Public Works, and we need to go in and define what is a safety hazard and let residents know that, because you got a mailbox can be a safety hazard. You have no idea what is deemed a safety hazard when you talk about a mailbox. Does that mean
We could put
you
that
can't
down
use a
as,
steel pole and concrete? Or does that mean you can't use a brick mailbox? I mean, what does that mean? Is I gotta use a 4x4 only or what? So doesn't give anybody any clear indication of what that's gonna be.
So you want some clarification on what is a safety hazard?
Yes, I think you have to somehow give some examples of what that could be.
Councilmember Dodwell, did you want to include a clarification in your motion along the lines that Councilmember Owen is suggesting?
that's fine if staff feels they can add in those definer terms,
Does staff feel
just like
comfortable
we
with that?
do
I
in.
mean, we
lots of-
can, I will say the one concern there, and this is just getting down to it, I mean, if we start defining what is and isn't the public safety, the reason why it's kind of vague is that it gives the department some flexibility if, you know, someone hits a mailbox and says, gosh, that wasn't there, I wouldn't have totaled my car, a kid has a concussion, whatever it might be. Hey, we look at it, give some discretion to say that is kind of dangerous, maybe you should replace that and be able to urge them to get rid of it. That said, if we go in there and start really defining what is and isn't a safety hazard, what that technically is, it's a prohibition on the brick and concrete mailboxes.
So,
Mhm.
so if we.
And I don't, that's not the intent.
That's
It
not the
really isn't.
intent.
That's
Yeah,
not the
that's not the
intent.
intent.
I don't
So is the concern with what Councilmember Owens is suggesting? Is it that we end up defining what is a safety hazard, and so we list items A, B, C, D, and E, but instead item M occurs? And since that wasn't specifically defined, then somebody comes back and says, well, you didn't define that as a safety.
That's what they'll
hazard.
do, yeah.
So
That's
that's
one-
why we
That's
want to keep
exactly
it
what
more
the fire
general.
will do.
Yeah.
Yep, and I think, I mean, this really is going back to kind of like the example that we were talking about with the concrete mailbox that was right up on the road with no separation or no joint in between the two that could help absorb any reverberations in the road. In that instance, it gives another fallback position that, hey, you know, that type of mailbox is right up on the road, shouldn't have been there in the first place. So when they come to, you know, say, city, you have to replace this, then it gives another layer of protection to say, you know, it really shouldn't have been in that location anyways.
So
I
what I'm gonna
appreciate
do
what the
is,
councilmember said, but I don't think we need to make any adjustments to the current way we do it.
This is not a prohibition of mailboxes, by the way, the
No.
concrete or decorative.
yeah, so I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. I was, making suggestions as to what Councilmember Dodwell should have in her motion, but so Councilmember Dodwell, why don't you go ahead and restate your motion?
That we follow the outline that was provided by city staff and city administrator to make the necessary adjustments to our ordinances in regards to mailboxes.
Okay, and Councilmember Krantz,
I'll second it.
You seconded that. So Councilmember Owen, you can propose an amendment to their motion if you wish, and then see if we get a second and then we can vote on it, or that's up to you.
I'm not gonna, I'll just vote nay.
Okay,
You can do that?
So
Okay.
I will,
all
on the
right,
record is voting no.
all right, very good. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion on this topic? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, Councilmember Owen is nay. Abstentions, none. Motion carries. Thank you all. That was a good discussion. Okay, so let's just take a.
The other thing I'll say is in my old neighborhood, I would have been calling you up to say, hey, I got a guy with the mailbox that's half leaning over in the street. You need to go talk to him. So we just put ourselves on the hook for being the mailbox place too.
Code enforcement already is, I think.
Okay, well then why do we need it here if it's already somewhere in the code?
We don't have it in the code right now, but if there's dilapidated property. then-
Right, that's what I'm getting at. There's dilapidated.
We had a lot of them in our neighborhood. Literally, they're being held up by bricks.
Okay,
Neighborhood. Anyway, go ahead.
so we move on to item number 7, which is topics for inclusion on future agendas. Targeted workforce analysis and review of contracted services with in-house staffing potential. So, City Administrator, I'll let you clarify what we're actually talking about there.
Yeah, so this is looking at specifically as we get into the budgeting season, taking a look at some of the day-to-day tasks that we have that our contractors carry out that are consistent, cover each month of the year. An example would be something like an electrician. We have a lot of streetlights that we've been maintaining. That's something just a flat out idea that you could possibly make a case that the amount of money we spend in a contract cost could pay for a position to do that work for us. The idea would be to identify a couple of scenarios like that where you might be able to save money over time with some of our contracted services. Some, when you look at the capital investment it takes up front, just won't make sense. And we haven't completed the full analysis, but I could see where some of the writing would go. I mean, at the end of the day, if you had seasonal work where, we're gonna hire 3 folks to do grass cutting across the city, first of all, you probably need a little bit more than that. But then also they're only gonna work, from March to early November. And then you have to pretty much lay them off or find something else for them to do. And then also you have to maintain and keep up all the equipment that it takes. So the question would be looking at some of those costs and see like, hey, if we were to bring someone on to do that, could we? And does it lead to a net expense to the city? Or does it lead to a net, gross in what we have left over in the bank? So if there are opportunities for that growth, we'll bring those forward. And then we'll also outline some of the issues that we identify, like the porta potties that we have provided certain places and events possibly can do the cleaning, but actually procuring and providing those porta potties might be a bigger business than what we might want to do.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Part of the original intent of the way we structured the city and the way it works is that we would not fall into the scenarios that you just outlined where we have seasonal workers that are on a full year payroll. And what do you do with them on the time periods that we don't need them? You have porta potties. Where are we going to store them during the winter when we don't have a place to store porta potties? I mean, the original intent of the charter I don't know which documents exactly was that the city doesn't get involved in a lot of this stuff. The contracting cost may be a little bit more on the front end, but if you look at the cost for insurance of the employee, the taxes that you have to pay on that employee, et cetera. So I think if the city staff wants to bring forward very detailed outline of what they're talking about, what budget is going to be set aside for that particular requirement. And then my concern is with the current tax law juggling that's going on right now, we may end up having to lay people off 2 years after we hire them because we don't have any more money for them.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's,
So-
yeah.
I understand the reasoning. I don't think it's a bad idea to go through that process, but and then it also takes some of the liability off the city if the contractor's doing things versus the city doing them. So that's just my perspective.
Councilmember,
I can appreciate what you just said. I'm sure there's exceptions, and the one exception that comes to my mind is we've hired an arborist that has paid for themselves many times over.
No, I don't disagree with that.
So
Yeah.
there's gotta be some exceptions.
That's where the targeted piece comes in.
Yeah.
Councilmember Owens, did you
I concur.
have a
No, my comment was probably similar, to Mr. Albers. If we're gonna do that, we've got to look at, you know, if we hired an electrician to replace all the streetlights, because it would save us some money. What happens when that particular individual wants to go on vacation or gets hurt and can't work for a month or something, then we're trying to scramble to find somebody to replace them in another term. So it's almost like you gotta be looking at groups of 4 and 5 people that are contracted, where if all of a sudden you lose one, you can still cover your shortages, and then it may make sense, but I think, you know, we gotta look at the depth of it, and it's gotta be a pretty big spin and a pretty broad swath of, you know, contractors before that would potentially make sense.
All right, so, any other discussion on this issue? So, city administrator, what action did you want from the committee?
It's not ready for action.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't notice. All right, very good. So moving on to miscellaneous, there's nothing. Next meeting is Tuesday, August the 12th, 2026 at 5:30 PM, right here in the same location. And with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment. But before I do entertain that motion, thank you, everyone. It's been a good meeting, good input from everyone, great discussion, and thank you for being here tonight. So with that, I'll now entertain that motion for adjournment from Councilmember Alberts. Do I have a second? Second. Councilmember Means. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?